Shabbat Shalom. Vayakhel Moshe et kol edat b'nei Yisrael. As we heard from Rabbi Schwartzman earlier this morning, as our parsha begins, Moses gathers the entire community together. And some of our commentaries wonder why Moses is gathering. First of all, as Rabbi Schwartzman pointed out, usually we begin with, as Jews do, talking. Vayomer, Moshe. Why are we gathering? Also, the people were already gathered. They just, built a golden calf and had to do all this stuff. And so what does it mean gathering? In one of our commentaries, Ramban, Nachmanides, says that the gathering in this moment is more than just a sort of, hey, everybody, come over here, you got to hear something. He says that it is actually a gathering that is a repair to the rupture of the golden calf, the rupture that happened within the community and the rupture that happened between the Israelites and God. And the gathering is a much deeper thing than simply coming together. This is a beautiful and much drashed moment. Rabbis have spent millennia using it to advocate gathering, coming together, repairing ruptures, building mishkans, our own sacred spaces wherever we are, whatever that we think divides us. It is rare that we can't bridge the gaps by gathering together. It is partially in this spirit of gathering that I attended a conference earlier this week. And it was certainly the spirit of gathering, and not at all because it happened in Miami. I'm kidding. I hate Miami. So this conference was called Zionism, A New Conversation. There were 110 rabbis who were invited to take part in this. There were rabbis from the Orthodox world, the Reform world, the conservative world, from pulpits, from Hillels, from day schools, the Moishe House, all over the place. In fact, the diversity of the attendees was one of the most amazing things of this conference. It was fascinating, it was uplifting to talk with colleagues about their struggles and their successes, what they're worried about, what they're hopeful for. It was truly a wonderful experience, and I will say, made me quite grateful that I got to return to all of you here at this synagogue, not that other people aren't happy with theirs. The speakers at the conference and the sessions and the talks and the breakout groups and all the conversation at the bar in the evening, all of it basically could fit into sort of two categories, right? One is Zionism and what's happening in Israel, and the other is anti-Semitism and what's happening here. Now, in 2 weeks, a bunch of us are going to Israel. We're going to have a wonderful time and an important time and a meaningful time. And with your leave, I'm going to hold talking about this conference and its Zionism and Israel for 2 weeks when we all get back. But today I want to talk about the anti-Semitism piece and what's happening in this country. So at this conference, the speakers, the rabbis, everyone was worried about different things. Different kinds of anti-Semitism, different anti-Semitism coming from different directions. These are things that we all know because we read and we listen, and we've spoken about this many times. There's anti-Semitism that's on the right, and it's been there for years, and there's anti-Semitism on the left, and it's been there for years, and there's anti-Semitism in our locality, and there's anti-Semitism in higher education, and there's a rise in anti-Semitic incidents basically across the country. Doesn't look good. In fact, it can be quite scary. And there was a lot of discussion happening about the ways in which we rabbis can come together to help our communities, the ways in which our communities can fight anti-Semitism when we see it, and where we should be spending our time fighting anti-Semitism, because it is unfortunately everywhere, and it can be scary. And one of the things that came out of this that I thought was interesting is that most people at this conference are worried about the anti-Semitism they see coming from the left right now. what's happening on college campuses. We met with the president of Brandeis. We met with the students, many students from campuses who are involved in a lawsuit against their college and had just testified in front of Congress about it. And we spoke with them. And one of the things that came out, and I'm not going to make judgments on whether the anti-Semitism on the right or the anti-Semitism on the left is worse or more dangerous or what's happening where. I have thoughts I'm happy to share over Kiddush. But what came out that I thought was interesting is the reason people are more worried about the anti-Semitism coming from the left right now isn't actually, I think, because they think it's more dangerous than that coming from the right. It's that we have a lot of institutions that we've built over generations to help protect us from what's happening on the right. We have the ADL, the ACLU, we have the FBI, we have the police, we have a lot of people that protect us. And what's happening on the left feels closer and newer and a little bit scarier because we don't exactly know how we're supposed to handle it. It's also something that many Jews care more about. Okay, the Klan hates us, fine. Okay, we don't know them, we don't know us, and it's just sort of out there. But college campuses are a place that we Jews have held up for generations as the thing that brings our people out of poverty, the thing that makes us upwardly mobile, the thing that we all want our children to grow up, to go to the best schools and to have the best degrees. And so it feels much scarier to know that there's people there who don't like us just because we're Jews. Nothing to do with Israel, just because we're Jews. And into all of this, where did it go? Into all of this, I should have given you homework for this sermon, but if the number of people who forwarded me this article is an indication, many of you have already read it. Into all of this comes Franklin Foyer's piece in The Atlantic. Raise a hand if you have heard of the piece already. Okay, raise a hand if you've read it. This is, I'm not just want to know how much I need to explain right now. Not a lot, don't worry. So Franklin Foyer writes an article, "The Golden Age of American Jews is Ending." Okay, he's right, that's the title. The Golden Age of American Jews is ending, and on one foot, you should read it, but if I can save you the 47 pages of the article, I'm not lying, that's what it is, then I will, which is basically he traces the Jewish people in this country are responsible for the creation of the liberal democratic policies, society that we're in. And when I say liberal and democratic, by the way, for the rest of what I'm going to say, that's with a small L and a small d, right? Democratic principles of being a democracy, liberal of people should have rights and tolerance, not the way that those terms are used in the political spectrum today. And he basically says that the Jewish people in this country, many of whom we love to talk about and respect, were a part of instilling liberal and democratic values in our society in America. We built it, we loved it, we are a part of it, and that is why we feel betrayed by the liberal democrats what he says is not that. He says that as liberal democratic values become less and less valued in this country, whether by what he calls the illiberal left, which we can again talk about at Kiddush or read the article and then we'll discuss, or the illiberal right, as liberal democratic values shrink, so too does our safety and security. Because the reason why we spent generations promoting liberalism, promoting democratic values, is because it's something that we inherently believe in if statistics and surveys are true, but also because it's what kept us safe here. Jews don't do well in an authoritarian society. Jews do very well in a democratic society of rights. And we've pushed tolerance for generations because it benefits us, because it keeps us safe. And so what Foyer writes is that starting with, he puts the beginning at September 11th. And at that moment on, America enters into crisis after crisis after crisis, and the idea of tolerance and inclusion and liberal values goes away and away and away, and different movements crop up that that sort of chip away at the belief that we should all sort of be included despite differences, et cetera, and that from that moment on has made Jews less safe in this country, has made us more worried in this country, and according to him, the golden age of the Jewish people in America is coming to a close. For the rest, you got to read. I saved you like 10 pages. You still have to read about 30 more, but we've got copies here and you can read it. And we all feel this to some extent. I think we might be at different levels of worried, but from what I've heard over the last 156 days, if not before, is that people in this community are worried we might not be as safe as we used to be. We're worried that we might not be as accepted as we used to be. Worried about our role in society moving forward. Foyer's piece is certainly not the first time this year that I've heard it suggested that Jewish life, as it has existed for about 2 generations, might be finished. And I want to put all of this into a personal context for a second. Yesterday, I got an email from a congregant asking for advice. They have a relative who lives in a small town where there aren't a lot of Jews, in a state where there really aren't a lot of Jews. This relative is a bit of a hero in their town, a firefighter, an EMT, a police officer, the civic trifecta. In this town, there was an anti-Semitic act perpetrated by a member of one of the right-wing Jew-hating groups in the area. Actually, one of the ones Foyer mentions in his article. The relative was asked by local media to be interviewed as a representative of the Jewish community, and did it. Now, the problem, and the reason I was getting an email, is not because there was backlash from the interview from the non-Jews around them. They were supportive, but our relative, and this could be really any one of our relatives, because unfortunately this story is so common, has 2 sons. One son is all in with what his father did, proud and vocal Jew. The other one was horrified at being outed as a Jew. This one hears anti-Semitic jokes in school. This one didn't invite any of his school friends to his bar mitzvah and generally keeps his Judaism closer to the vest. So the congregant writes, do you have any advice for what my relative can do in this situation? In this email, I saw so much of what we are dealing with today. The very real increase in acts of Jew hatred. Questions of whether we should stand up in any given moment, speak up, keep our head down, and not jeopardize our own situation. This is a problem our people have been dealing with for millennia. Just turn to Esther and the story of Shushan in a few weeks. So what do we say to this person trying to live their life, a life dedicated to helping the people around them, now faced with anti-Semitism from those same people? What do we say to college students that we want to send to the very best schools, as we always have? What do we say to all of us trying to live our lives as Jews in this country and wanting to thrive as Jews in this country? It might look bleak, but we can't give up. We can't all move away. We can't all move to Israel, nor would all of American Jewry perhaps want to. We simply have nowhere else to go. There is no other America to leave to. As God said when touring Adam around the Garden of Eden, everything I have created, I created for you. Be mindful that you do not devastate my world, for if you ruin it, there is no one to repair it after you. We are put in a tough spot. We are the first generation, in at least 2, to know real anti-Semitism, to know what our great-grandparents felt or our grandparents felt. And it's a hard place to be in, but for this we were born and chosen. It is a task that falls to us, lest we leave it to our children to try to repair. And I think there's an answer in this week's Parsha. Because if you read along in Vayakhel, after the gathering happens, Moses tells the people about the creation of the Mishkan, which we've already read, and the altar and the building of the utensils and the building of this sacred space. And for the first time ever reading it, I realized something. Now, the people just got out of Egypt. Years, hundreds of years of slavery. They're about to enter into the land and conquer and fight. If this was a Greek myth, the people would have built, or God would have showed up with the sword of Moses and the shield of Aaron and these fantastic weapons that Joshua would have led the people into battle with, and the time they would have spent in the desert would have been preparing for the wars to come so that the slavery never happens again, and we wouldn't blame them for that. But that's not what the people create. They create an altar for forgiveness and atonement. They create a Mishkan for bringing God and holiness into our world and for bringing the people closer to one another and to God. Because the Jewish response to crisis is not to build walls, but to build altars, to build ways of bringing holiness and Judaism into our world. Now, we must, of course, be on guard. The Torah knows this. The Torah says this. We protect ourselves. We take care. We fight Amalek when Amalek shows up. We conquer the land when we need to. But that's about total 10 verses in the entire Torah about the fighting and the war, and chapters and hundreds of verses on the creation of a sacred structure of connection in our Torah, because we want to make the world a better place through holiness. So my answer to this article is that if making America the safest, most prosperous place for our Jewish people was our commitment to small l, small d, liberal democratic values, then the way to perpetuate this golden age is to double down on liberal and democratic values, to make our society one that is accepting and tolerant of others, so that we, in turn, are accepted and tolerated. It's to fight harder to make this an inclusive place, to fight harder for what we believe in, and to fight harder for our acceptance and our ability to be in this place, not to throw in the towel and say, that's it, the Golden Medina is golden no longer. And what do we say to the relative of ours who's in a small town, who's proud to be Jewish, but is a little bit scared of what's going on? Again, I think the Parsha tells us that we gather, we Vayakhel, we bring people in. We act as Jews have acted for thousands and thousands of years, which is that we pray, we observe, we do what it is to be Jewish, we increase our Judaism. We learn more about our Judaism. We are proud of our Judaism, and we stand up for our Judaism. That is the way that we perpetuate what it means to be a Jew in this country. That is the way that we stay one of the most prosperous and successful stories of immigrants coming to this nation that we have ever seen. And we make sure that this country is open and welcoming for us and for others to continue that. Because the only way that we maintain our safety here is not by fighting. We're not strong enough for that. We can't do that. And it's not in our DNA. It's not in our book to circle the wagons and just completely turn inward. We have to reach outward. We have to build mishkans wherever we go that people can see and look and say, wow, look at that holy people. Look at that nation of priests. They are incredible. We should behave in such a way so that the anti-Semites can't even understand. People can't understand why you would be anti-Semitic in this world, because we've done so much, and we do so much, and we are so kind and caring. And we are productive members of this society. Vayakhel is a way of gathering the Israelites together to renew their peoplehood and sacred mission. It's something that God does from time to time. So when does God renew the covenant? Well, God renews the covenant after Eden. God renews the covenant after the flood. God renews the covenant after the golden calf. God renews the covenant because we need it after we make it through tumultuous times. So we should work to gather ourselves and heal the ruptures that are in our communities, to heal the ruptures that are between our communities. We should use this moment to gather with our Israeli family and work to heal the ruptures between the two great centers of modern Judaism. But more on that in a couple weeks. We should reach out to gather with non-Jews, the ones who don't know us, the ones who love us, and the ones who are silent, and maybe even the ones who are angry or misinformed. Earlier this month, the Overbrook Church had a fire. And so they were unable to use their space. And the first call that I made, I'm friendly with the pastor, was, what do you need? Do you need any space for us? And he said, thank you so much. And they've been using on weekdays, they daven somewhere else, but they've been using on weekdays our space for Torah classes. Bible study and staff meetings, and it's been an incredible thing to have them here. I went to their Bible study. They invited me. We learned parables about that guy, Jesus, that's one. And then I invited them to my lunch and learned the next day. We learned the halacha of Purim Katan. It was not quite as interesting. But one of the things that was remarked as we were discussing, they're trying to find a place for Easter. They need more space. They don't have in the place where they're going and what it can be. And one of the things that was remarked in this meeting we were talking about was just when in the history of our people would the church burn down next door and they knock on our door and say, hey, could we borrow some space from you? Like, could we, and it doesn't come with a bayonet or a pogrom. It's just yeah, of course, come, here we go. And we know with 100% certainty that chas v'shalom, if the same thing happened to us, they would open their house to us. And that's incredible. And that comes because of the relationships that were built, not just in the year that I've been, by my predecessor, by all of you, by the fact that we have been a people not just walled into the corner of our little place here on Remington and Lancaster, but looking out at the rest of the Jews and non-Jews around us. And I'm sorry that Ed Snyder's not here, but I know this has been something that is near and dear to his heart for years and years and years. And we are safer here because of that. And we have more recourse to stop anti-Semitism here because of that. And so we need to continue to reach out to our neighbors around us. We need to continue to gather and draw and repair the ruptures of the past, because things might feel tumultuous right now, but I know in my heart that the golden age of American Jews is nowhere near ending. If we can keep this strain of inclusive, tolerant, small d democratic values that got us here alive in this country, we can continue to be safe, we can grow, we can continue to expand on what it means to be a Jew and a human in this world. Now is a time to gather and heal, not to separate and divide. God gathers the people a few times in the Torah. God gives Torah and covenant each time, and each time it's to a larger and larger group. First to Moses, then Moses and Aaron, then Moses and Aaron and the elders, then today Kol Edat Yisrael, all of the people of Israel, and then later in Devarim, absolutely everyone from the prince to the water drawer to every single person in the community. Each time God gathers more and more people, so too for us, we need to make sure that we are in relationship with each other, within our community, and within our society. We need to build altars and not walls. We need to live deeply Jewish and proud lives, grow in our faith and our practice, and behave in such a way that no one could even think of asking if the golden age is ending, because look around, it is flourishing. Shabbat Shalom.